Right, welcome everyone. It's 4 o'clock, so I think we'll begin. So welcome to my fellow Cabinet members, councillors and members of the public to this Cabinet meeting today at City Hall. As usual, the agenda papers and public forum submissions are available on the Council's website. Okay, yeah, well, I'll give you 2 minutes, yeah? Go on. Can we get a microphone? Have we got a microphone anywhere? Can we get a microphone? Thanks, Louise.
My name is Noor Sharif, and I'm from Barton House, and I got a couple of questions to ask. Why are we still paying a rent for the flat we're not allowed to live in? And why wouldn't meet with Acon block representative to discuss with the solution?
So there's a full process for following for raising questions. I've invited you to make a statement should you want to make one, but we're not going to take. There are a range of people who are here for a number of agenda items. The Barton House item is later on in the agenda. There are people who submitted questions. We will respond to them in the usual way. For any further information, I mean, we can pick up with you externally, but this is not the forum for that, for a question and answer session now.
My name's John Wisby. I'm the acting chair of the Barton House Tenants Association, recently reconstituted. I'd like to say we, the residents of Barton House, demand that there are rehousing for those who feel unsafe in the building, and everything should be done to support those that wish to remain within the building and support the community that has developed therein. We also would like an independent investigation into the and rent to be paused for those currently paying for it, because it's causing financial difficulty for those of us that are living in hotel accommodation. We also demand accountability and answers from the council. We need a timeline of how events unfolded from the moment the central government made Bristol City Council aware of the defects of the building in 2017.
Thank you for your statement. So now, I'll carry on with the agenda, if that's okay? Yep. Brilliant, thank you. Can I please draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure, which is outlined on the agenda and is currently being displayed on the screen. The meeting is being webcast, so can I please remind everyone to speak into the microphone to ensure you are clearly heard. Agenda item 2, public forum. So just a reminder that statements and questions will be taken at the time the relevant agenda item is discussed. I will reply to questions or ask the relevant cabinet member to respond. Agenda item 3, apologies for absence. We have apologies from Mayor Marvin Rees and Councillor Marley Bennett. I'm also aware that Councillors Holland and Nicola Beach are both running late, but will be with us shortly. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest to note on today's agenda? No? Great, thank you. Agenda item 5, matters referred for consideration by scrutiny or full council. There are no referrals from scrutiny. Agenda item 6, reports from scrutiny. We have one report from the Resources Scrutiny Commission Finance Task Group, and Councillor Heather Mack is here to present. Heather.
Yeah, I'll give my apologies for Councillor Gollop. I'm stepping in for him as chair. Our report mostly focused on the council tax reduction scheme. Obviously, it was submitted prior to some of the information that's now come out. So, you know, the majority of the scrutiny group did not want the council tax reduction scheme cut. I have to put it in that way. We are, you know, can't speak to everyone's views, so we do welcome the decision that it's not being cut. So I want to focus on some of the other points made in our report. One is about the consultation. I think we're very disappointed about how the consultation looked. It was a very complicated consultation, and I would comment, we had a fantastic consultation on the HOA when a cabinet member led it through, and I think we hoped for something more easier to engage with on the council tax reduction scheme. Our report also comments on the fact that if we don't cut the council tax reduction scheme, clearly we'll have to now find those 3 million in savings, which obviously you're very aware of. There have been a lot of comments about councillors being involved. Obviously, I'm Vice Chair of Resources Scrutiny, but I would comment in terms of sharing that responsibility where councillors, backbench councillors, opposition councillors do not have the same information. We're not in the same room. You know, that responsibility cannot be equally shared amongst all councillors, but as scrutiny committee we are there to look at options and look at the savings proposed to us. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Heather. And thanks to everyone on scrutiny. Actually, I appreciate that it was a tough journey, and the meetings I did attend, everyone was working well together. So thank you. Agenda item 7, Chair's business. So first, just to take an opportunity to thank the residents of Barton House for their cooperation and resilience as we wait for the full results of the structural survey. We will be speaking to the Barton House paper later in the meeting, but just wanted to place on record our thanks and appreciation for those in the community who've helped out with the response. As someone who lived in Barton House once upon a time, I'm pleased to see that residents are able to come in and contribute to the agenda today, and it's good to have you here. With regard to the autumn statement, so I'd just like to take a moment to comment on the disappointing autumn statement. Local government is designated as non-protected, and the statement contains a very strong indication that local government should prepare for continued real-term cuts in funding in future years. The Household Support Fund has been pulled, which is how we've paid for free school meals outside of term time for the past 3 years, as well as the Local Crisis Support Fund. Both of these will likely stop as a consequence of that decision by the government. We're proud to be a real living wage employer and welcome increases in the living wage, but without corresponding support, this of course translates to more pressure on Council's budget. Despite the significant challenges faced by local government, there is very little in the statement that is new, with no additional new core revenue funding being announced beyond the increases that were outlined last year. We see the consequences in the reports that we'll discuss later on in the meeting. Finally, I just wanted to draw attention to the significant announcement last week by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. The government have announced a £19 million pilot programme built on Bristol City Leap public-private partnership model. Local authorities in York and North Yorkshire will replicate City Leap's approach, utilising experts from the partnership, including representatives from Bristol City Council, Amoresco and Vattenfall. So a huge vote of confidence in the work that we've driven towards net zero and played a key role in this work and sharing our experience. The government have also announced 2 other projects in the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and West Midlands Combined Authority, both of which reflect the principles of the Bristol City Leap approach. Where Bristol goes, others follow. And finally, I just want to comment on the reopening of Bristol Beacon last week. As well as restoring a derelict council-owned building in the heart of the city into a world-class venue, this is an investment in Bristol's music ecosystem, which will take the city forward for another 150 years. I was proud to stand on stage alongside our partners to welcome people to enjoy the space, that after a challenging project, we stayed the course despite opposition and cynicism. Onto the agenda. Agenda item 8, Cultural Investment Programme 2023 to 2027, and I'm going to hand over to Councillor Asher Craig.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. Oh, sorry, I can't. Okay, apologies. So, firstly, on behalf of the Mayor and Councillor Cheney, I would like to record our thanks to the members of the independent panel and the facilitator who have done a great job of assessing all of the applications and producing an impressive list of recommendations put forward today. The Cultural Investment Programme includes 3 funding strands, and this paper seeks to allocate funding of £1.4 million to the openness and imagination themes. We are proud of the fact that we can still allocate money to the Cultural Investment Programme at a time when other councils are effectively declaring themselves bust and experiencing huge deficits, and we ourselves have to find £30 million to bridge our own gap. The panel recommended 11 awards for imagination, totalling £313,201 from 34 applications, and we recommended 15 awards from 30 submissions for openness, totalling £1.93 million. It is disappointing to see some organisations criticising the very well considered recommendations made based on the applications submitted. You'll hear from Equity, they were not consulted, but they were actually offered a seat on the independent panel, but turned it down, preferring to intermittently criticise from the sidelines, a regular occurrence. Staggering that you think we should be supporting the bigger organisations with bars, cinemas and tourist activities. For councillors to stand up and complain about the lack of support for arts and culture, we look forward to an amendment being brought forward for culture funding in the next budget setting. I welcome the measured comments of the Old Vic, who, despite not being funded this time, but are publicly able to recognise the challenges felt as we continue to fund the cultural sector. As the budget crisis continues to worsen and central government continues to punish local authorities, this situation will only get worse. We are pleased to see new organisations recommended that represent a real shift in diversity by reaching out to areas of the city that are often missed in grant-based funding processes. We now have 63% of organisations that have been recommended for imagination funding that work with audiences and participants from equalities groups, including people with disabilities, refugee and asylum seekers, and Black, Asian and minoritized communities and women. 67% of organisations recommended for openness funding and 64% of organisations recommended for imagination funded have stated that over 50% of their trustees, workforces and members come from an equalities group. Bristol City Council's investment into these organisations over the next 4 years will help to reach communities who currently do not have equitable access to arts and culture. And the Cultural Investment Programme will continue the Council's ambition, commitment and vision to make arts and culture accessible for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Asher. On this report, we have received 6 public forum statements. The first is from Rachel Fagan. Rachel, are you here? Yeah, Rachel, you have 1 minute. Louise, just wait for Louise to come with the microphone. Rachel, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, just in response to that comment about equity, who I also am involved with, I'd just like to say the reason that we did not take up a place on that board is because it's a non-transparent panel whose decision-making has never been and still is not transparent. Also, within the CIP report, it says quite clearly that the City Council has made a 40% cut over 5 years and somehow think that is something that they should be proud of. Within the Cultural Investment Programme, you say that £750,000 will be allocated for originators funding over the next 4 years for the Imagination Fund and for evaluation and access costs. Arts Council England, who were contacted, have said that this pot of money looks incredibly vulnerable at a time of cost cutting. It is promised to a stream of funding that is as yet not open for tender and therefore not promised to anyone and could easily disappear. If you had had a head of culture in place and your own arts officers had been involved in the decision-making of the funding, then perhaps they would have been able to flag this. And again, Arts Council England have asked, how were the decisions made and by whom? For even they do not know the identity of this so-called transparent panel. So much for transparency. And we speak to the Cabinet and say, you are responsible for these funding decisions. And we will keep asking questions until we get satisfactory answers. Thank you.
That is your minute up. Thank you. Next, we have a statement from Kim Hicks. Kim, you have 1 minute.
So following these recently reported shocking and destructive arts funding cuts that are proposed, which, as we know, will remove all City Council financial support for, among others, organisations like Wardrobe Theatre, Watershed, Bristol Old Vic, St George's, I reread the literature on the Cultural Investment Programme. Its mission statement, making arts and culture available to everybody, with stated aims to support people being creative and give money to people, places and partnerships to help change people's lives, Currently, you are indeed changing people's lives. The thousands of creative people who see all their opportunities to work closing as crucial council funding is not just reduced but completely disappears. The Cabinet must rethink this approach before the damage to the cultural sector in Bristol becomes irreparable, as it already has for many groups and individuals. And hearing that Manchester City Council has recently increased cultural funding by 40%, should we be saying, where Manchester goes, others follow?
Right, thank you. Then we've got a statement from Paula Orrell. Paula, are you here? Thank you, Paula. You have 1 minute.
Okay, the creative industries are a powerhouse within our economy, exhibiting rapid growth and significantly contributing to the gross value added, 126 billion, outpacing several other sectors, recognised as one of the key growth segments by the current government, the fifth growth industry. It's pivotal to Bristol City Council to re-envision the cultural significance of arts within Bristol. The council should spearhead initiatives instead of undermining its potential, aligning with other major core cities which have continuously invested in their creative sectors. Innovative strategies can be employed to fortify budgets, such as implementing a hotel tourism tax, which was successfully adopted in Manchester and Liverpool. It's imperative not to rush into cuts without exploring viable alternatives. I implore on you to safeguard these invaluable assets. These creative organisations bolster economic growth, foster community well-being and present new prospects. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Next up, we have a statement from Councillor Patrick McAllister. Patrick.
Thank you. I am quite saddened to see the scale of the cuts to arts funding, including funding for businesses in Hotwells and Harbourside, such as the Watershed. I'm, of course, acutely aware, as we all are, of the financial pressures the council is under, but it could risk things like future employment, tourism rates, business rates, if these anchor businesses are not adequately supported by the council, and they form such an integral part of life around the city. It should always be the role of local authorities to help support socially valuable businesses such as these and the cultural scene, and sadly it is the cruel austerity enforced from central government that is destroying yet another of the vital functions of local government. It's a tragic day for Bristol's once vaunted cultural scene. But it would be remiss to not mention the obvious contrast between the huge sums spent on the Bristol Beacon at enormous cost to taxpayers present and future, however warranted, and the crumbs that remain for other smaller organisations. At a time when Bristol's cultural strategy has been left rudderless and when funding has already been delayed, it is difficult to have confidence in this decision-making process.
The next statement is from Councillor Annie Stafford-Townsend, who I did see at the Bristol Beacon opening last week, interestingly. No? Not here? Okay. Councillor Tessa Fitzjohn, over to you. You have 1 minute for your statement.
All local authorities are struggling with tough financial choices, and the Cultural Investment Programme is one of those choices. I do question the value of reducing funding streams and restructuring the selection process at a time when the arts are struggling. It will affect the cultural infrastructure of the city, affecting major institutions like Bristol Old Vic and smaller, less well-known organisations such as Wardrobe Theatre and MAKY, all part of Bristol's international identity. I'm concerned these cuts will affect Bristol's relationship with national funders, Arts Council England, Heritage Lottery Fund, as they expect their investments to be a shared risk and to see equal commitment. The arts operate on top-down, bottom-up approach. They provide wide benefits to our cities and communities, as well as over 10 billion into the economy. If Bristol removes one layer, it will affect the whole. I ask the Mayor and Cabinet to review this short-term decision. I would also say that I fully support your funding of the Bristol Beacon. I think it's amazing to have a central venue.
Thank you. Before we move into questions, I'd probably just comment. We're about to take a paper in a minute on the £20 million overspend the council has, and that's based in children's social care, adult social care and temporary accommodation. Those three things are driving cuts across the council and will continue to do so nationally. We're not alone. Nottingham City Council just declared bankruptcy. Birmingham City Council have already gone. I know of a few other core cities that are struggling at the moment. So to suggest, it would be lovely to live in a world in which arts and culture is not competing for funding with getting disabled people to school or a knock on the door for elderly adults. Unfortunately, it is. So whilst I absolutely and 100% agree that government should be involved in supporting culture, and I'm fully supportive of that concept, at this exact moment in time, we are having to decide between some really difficult crisis decisions and some decisions on funding culture, arts and culture. Now, it's tough. No one wants to make those decisions. Those things shouldn't be in the same pot of funding, but they are. So what do we do? What would you do? What would anyone do? But that's a capital project.
Yeah,
There's a difference between a capital project and revenue, ongoing revenue funding, isn't there? The impact of... But that's nothing to... But the Bristol Beacon funding has absolutely nothing to do with ongoing revenue funding. That's a one-off project that comes from borrowing, completely separate. No, I agree. Absolutely. We do, and to try and educate me on what is and isn't a crisis in this situation appears condescending and a bit upsetting, to be honest. So we're working really very hard to balance all of these budgets together, but it is not an easy situation. It is a very difficult situation. We are fighting some of the worst and most vulnerable people in the city. We're fighting making sure all the bins get collected, making sure all the lights are still lit, all the potholes are fixed, all the green initiatives need to be done, and the culture funding. All those things are in one big pot. Well, not everyone isn't talking about that. We weren't talking about that. That was what you raised. Thank you. But there's no public question on that. So, no, you've had your minute, I'm afraid. We can't continue on this all day. So, we're going to need to move on. I mean, you haven't got a microphone, so anyone watching won't be able to hear. But also, you had your moment statement. You've got the opportunity to put in a question should you want to. And I'm happy to catch up. As Cabinet Member, I will happily catch up with you outside this meeting to talk about how difficult this is. I would happily meet all of you. I mean, I am a 100% supporter of the arts and culture scene. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so next we had a question from Councillor Hulme, but she's not here. Next question from Councillor Fitzjohn.
So, I would say that the cultural investment programme is really commendable in its focus on equity and diversity. I have no problem with that at all. However, I am disappointed to see the Mayor didn't feel he could support the openness funds for some of our significant cultural organisations. If one relates back to my statement, I believe there's a top-down and a bottom-up, and the two work together. Previously, the Mayor has indicated he would consider applying for Bristol to become the next UK City of Culture. With applications expected 2025 to open on 2029, my question relates to, if we want to do that, how are we going to afford it?
So, just to pick you up on something, the Mayor didn't make this decision. This decision was recommended by an independent panel, and we are taking that forward. Marvin hasn't decided to cut or apply funding in any direction. That comes from the cross-party panel. In terms of the question, I mean, it's a tough one to answer. Do we have enough money? I mean, it's being led by organisations outside of the council.
Shall I give you my supplementary question, because that would be easier to answer? So, I appreciate that Bristol going on to its own in the current climate is probably not feasible. But would you consider, or the committee that made the decisions, consider a consortium bid, either with the West of England Combined Authority or with their partners, or all together? It's being done. Cornwall put in a whole bid. Torquay and Exeter put in together, so it's something that's happening.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, so we have signed up to the Cultural Compact, which obviously we did through WECA rather than individually. So that's the Arts Council Cultural Compact, which you'll know. So yeah, yes, we would absolutely be up for that. Obviously, as I said, the bid is actually not being led by the council, but led by some external organisations. I'm sure they'd be up for that conversation too.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's really good news.
Thank you. Can I ask any Cabinet members to comment? No? Thank you. Okay, in which case I'll hand back to Asher to state the decision, which I support and is now displayed on the screen.
So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Asher. Agenda item 9, Fire Safety Framework. I will now ask Councillor Kaida to introduce this report.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Since 2016, the Council has invested £2.5 million per year on building safety improvements in our high-rise blocks. The current fire safety framework, which is used to complete essential fire compartmentalisation and fire stopping works, expires in April 2024. Following approval of the Council's budget earlier this year and the allocation of funding via the Housing Revenue account, we are now investing an additional £96 million in putting in new building safety measures in place. This investment will see new sprinkler and alarm systems being installed and work being carried out to continue the replacement of cladding. The procurement exercise will seek to establish a framework of specialist contractors who complete fire safety works across the housing service portfolio. An established framework enables efficient procurement and deployment of contracting resources to complete this essential safety work, allowing the existing programmes of work to progress and improve safety of the Council's housing stock. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. There were no public forum statements on this one. There was a public forum question which came from Councillor Brenda Massey, but I didn't see Brenda here. Okay, thank you. Can I ask any Cabinet members if they wish to comment? Tom?
It's really good to see this coming forward, showing our ongoing commitment to fire safety. We're investing significant sums of money in fire and building safety, and obviously putting in sprinklers in all of our high-rise blocks is a significant undertaking and has impacts, doesn't it, on our wider kind of budget pressures within the Housing Revenue account. So it's good to see us staying steadfast in our commitment on this agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Okay, anyone else want to comment? No, in which case I'll hand back to Councillor Doug to take the decision, which I support and is now being displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the supportive comments there. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thanks, Kai. Agenda item 10, Fibre and CCTV contract amendment. So the existing contract wasn't big enough, so we've effectively asked to increase the scope of the contract to 15.5 million. Essentially, this isn't a commitment to spend any new money. What we know is that services are coming forward with plans for CCTV that we wouldn't have bandwidth within the contract to actually be able to deliver on. So we either would have to, each service would have to go out and retender, or we go for a big retender exercise, or we just extend this one, which is what we're doing here. The increase in contract value does not constitute a request to increase budgets or approve spending, and does not commit us to any additional expenditure. Any revenue or capital expenditure against the contract must continue to follow the Council's financial regulations, delegated improvement and procurement regulation against funded budgets and within approved budget envelopes. On this, we received no public forum statements. There was a public forum question submitted, again from Councillor Brenda Massey, but she's not here, unfortunately. Do any Cabinet members wish to comment? No? Obviously, CCTV in fly tipping areas and in tower blocks and so on is a very useful, and it really does make a big difference to people's standard of living. So I just take the decision now, which is to be displayed on the screen. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the reports. Agenda item 11, purchase of properties for the provision of children's homes. This item has been deferred to a future meeting. Agenda item 12, the City Centre Development and Delivery Plan, which I'll present on behalf of the Mayor. The City Centre Development and Delivery Plan is a project that has been carried out by the regeneration team over the last 2.5 years. It builds on the adopted city centre framework and sets out a clearer vision and strategies for the future of Bristol's Broadmead area. With nationwide challenges for city centre high street recovery, the city's requirement to deliver much needed new homes and over 10 major developments starting to come forward in this area, this is a critical document to guide those schemes and effectively integrate them together with a coherent and high quality strategy for public realm, transport, community, culture and green space. We would like to thank stakeholders and developers for working with us to develop the plan throughout the project. The feedback and information received has been essential in shaping the proposals to address the key issues in our city centre. To bring the DDP proposals to life, the next key projects include using 1.2 million strategic SIL funding to develop detailed designs and achieve planning permission for the proposals to rejuvenate Castle Park as a more accessible, inclusive green space for all. We are also committed to delivering an inclusive ground floor strategy for all new development in the area, safeguarding much sought after city centre space for a diverse mix of community and cultural organisations and groups. On this report, we have received no public forum statements. There were 3 public forum questions, and David, you've got 2 of them, but I think you've submitted too many questions. So I think you were saving yourself, keeping your powder dry for agenda items later.
Quality is one. We just want to make sure that when we move bus routes and stops around us between Wacker and Bristol, that we have a conversation with the Mayor and with Dawn, and we look at these routes in particular when we stop, because for disabled people...
You are having your question here, David, after you said you wouldn't. But we'll get your written response anyway. But I mean, the conversation has been pretty exhaustive. I've got a list of all the things we did, and it's huge.
The questions for Gordon Richardson, it's in my name, but it shouldn't be. It's Bristol's Billy Qualities Forum. My questions and next ones. This is Gordon's question, by the way, so
okay.
That's why I asked for a response.
Okay, we'll get you a written response, but in terms of the consultation, it has been extensive. I've got a very long list in front of me here. Thank you. And then the third question was from Councillor Philippa, who was unfortunately not with us today. Can I ask any Cabinet member, should they wish to comment? Ellie.
Thank you. So it's really great to see the next stage of Castle Park redevelopment coming forward, which we need to be focused on seeing through. It's a park that works really hard for the central Bristol area, the densest part of the city, and supports a huge range of people on any given day, from local residents, students and workers to commuters, visitors and tourists. The plans coming forward are really exciting, and in the meetings that I've been, I've received cross-party support as well, which is really encouraging. We know that the park is not as safe or accessible or optimised in terms of delivering environmental benefits or facilities for culture and children, and the plan comes forward is going to bring new public toilets, improved, more joined-up active travel routes, more consideration and provision for wildlife, more accessibility, and make it a really key attraction that Central Bristol can be really proud of. I also have to say that around budget time, strategic SIL becomes that thing that different political groups like to play around with, reallocate, and I've had concerns about in the past, and I think it's right that we say that it's important that this is a priority for this administration to get this done, and that's a responsible thing to do, rather than move our strategic SIL pots around too much and redistribute them out to things that are less strategic. So this will bring huge benefits to us as a city and for the health and wellbeing of our residents. I really welcome it.
Great, thanks, Ellie. Tom.
Really brilliant to see this coming forward. Obviously, I think it's the homes it's going to deliver alongside all of those other benefits. I'm really pleased to see focus on policy compliant, affordable housing, and we've got that more of that leverage being the freeholder as well of quite a bit of the city centre area. So really looking forward to seeing that, and also a focus on key worker homes as well, because we know that one of the things we're really struggling with in the city is key workers taking up jobs in the city because of how expensive it is to be able to rent. So it's good to see that coming into the focus as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Tom. It's tempting to, and I hope achieving quite a lot of things at the same time. Don.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, transport will be engaging with this in an ongoing manner with this long-term piece of work. We get used to the transport situation in the centre of the city, but it's not satisfactory at all. It's quite difficult to find your way from Broadmead to the bus station, in all honesty, without a map at times. and the bus is kind of settling in horse fair when you're going from the north to the south or south to the north of the city. Again, a lot of time is wasted there with the different modes all mixed up. So there's a lot of possibilities here that we're looking to seize as part of the ongoing development of the centre, and very appreciative of this framework, which kind of gives the council a bit of leverage both in planning and in terms of renewal of its leases as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Don. Thank you all for your comments. I will now take the decision, which will be displayed on the screen. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. On to agenda item 13, the Short Breaks Innovation Fund bid. And I'll ask Councillor Asher Craig to introduce this one.
Okay. So this paper seeks to accept and spend £1.1 million of grant funding from the Department for Education's Short Breaks Innovation Fund. This money will be used to extend our existing pathways to short breaks programme for a further year. The project has been co-designed with parents and carers. It delivers a bridging service to support children and young people with autism who struggle to leave their home, attend school, or access typical short break services due to anxiety. The Pathways to Short Breaks programme builds positive, trusting relationships with young people and helps them to build resilience and manage their anxiety through activities that match their interests. This additional funding will allow us to expand the programme to include early intervention measures for neurodiverse children, as well as therapeutic parenting programmes to support families. This service will support children, young people and their families, and will also reduce demand on other higher cost services. Thank you.
Thanks, Asher. On this one, we've received no public forum statements or questions. Do any other Cabinet members wish to comment? No? In which case, I'll hand back to Councillor Asher Cage to take the decision which I support.
Thanks. I just wanted to make the point, and it was a point that you made earlier on, when it comes to safeguarding children and adults in this city compared with all the other things that we manage, children and adults get the least press. We hardly, if not at all, get any questions on anything to do with children and adults. And so, but yet they are the two budgets where, the need is the greatest and the spend is, through the roof, not through any fault of our own, but because the demand is great. So, I hear what people are saying and I understand how passionate people can get over a whole range of different issues. But when it comes to safeguarding and protecting children in this city, this has to be, for me, a number one priority. So without further ado, in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations set out in the report. Thanks.
Thanks, Asher. Good timing for the press to leave. Next up, agenda item 14, Flax Bourton Public Mortuary Byelaw. I will introduce this report. This paper seeks to provide the Council with powers to charge for overextended use of the Flax Bourton Mortuary, which is in line with feedback from a public consultation. Bristol must continue to make the most out of the finite 42 square miles and limited resources available to us. This is another example of capacity being reached and the Council taking necessary action to ensure Bristol residents still have an effective service. In a case that's not too dissimilar to the need of expansion at South Bristol Cemetery, our mortuary at Flax Bourton Public has limited capacity. We are preparing for the future, taking steps to manage the pressure caused by more coroner's cases and an increase in the average time between a person's death and their funeral. This charge will only come into effect after the storage goes past the coroner's release date. This bylaw will introduce charges for each day beyond the 3 days that follow this. Charges would range between £100 and £200 a day to ensure the smooth operation of the mortuary, with all fees going towards its operation and maintenance. It's proposed that any charges would start on the 1st of April 2025 to allow time for funeral companies to source alternative mortuary space. We've received no public forum statements or questions on this one. Do any Cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay, in which case I'll take the decision. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Agenda item 15, me again, collection fund surplus and deficit report. Despite ongoing cost of living concerns, there are positive signs for the local economy, with a continued reduction in claims for council tax support and significant improvements in the collection of both business rates and council tax arrears. Claims to our council tax reduction scheme have continued to fall, particularly amongst working age claimants. This has resulted in a £1.4 million saving against the 23-24 budget. Council tax arrears have also significantly reduced, resulting in a much reduced contribution to bad debt. The 2023-24 budget set an overall collection rate of 95%. The actual collection rate is likely to be around 96.5% by the end of the year. Business rates recovery has also significantly improved, again with a resulting reduction in any further contribution to the bad debt provision. However, changes to property rateable values have resulted in an overall reduction in business rate income. Appeals against business rate valuations appear to be levelling off. This means any top-up to the appeals provision will be significantly less than in the last year. There is a deficit of 2.3 million brought forward from previous years on business rates. This, along with a further in-year deficit, creates an overall deficit for business rates of 5.2 million. Council tax sees a small surplus brought forward, adding to the in-year projected surplus, producing an overall surplus for Bristol of 712,000. Which means the overall estimated deficit of 4.5 million will be carried forward into 24-25. However, this can be offset by additional unbudgeted business rate income due to Bristol resulting in an improved position against the MTFP. On this report, we've received no public forum statements or questions. Do any Cabinet members want to comment? No. It's a key part of setting the budget. So I'll take the decision. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Agenda item 16, Council Tax Reduction Scheme. When I was growing up in Bristol, my family was supported by council tax benefit, which was a real lifeline for us. Since 2016, we have protected Council Tax Reduction Scheme, which replaced that benefit and is one of the last full schemes in the country. Protected it from national government austerity. We have provided over £325 million worth of support to families across Bristol since taking office, without the support of opposition parties. The current scheme costs £43.4 million a year, which equates to around 10% of our overall budget, with low-income working-age households collectively receiving £30 million of support and pensioners £13.4 million. Up to 100% of households' council tax bills are covered. In February 2023, full council agreed that the scheme would be reviewed for 24-25 with a £3 million savings target, net of collection rate and monies collected for the Fire Authority and Police Commissioner. At the same meeting, no opposition councillors moved amendments, and 15 opposition councillors, including members who've spoken at this meeting, voted for a 15% minimum flat rate to reduce the council tax reduction scheme by a further 1.5 million. That's a total of 4.5 million. The council consulted on a number of options, with opposition councillors still not being forthcoming with additional savings, alternative savings. The overall scheme for 24-25, without change, is estimated to cost between 43.7 million and 46.8 million, depending on caseload estimates and council tax changes. The consultation results show that a majority of respondents would support a change to the scheme. Many of the respondents supported the scheme being maintained in its current form, and we will, I'm sure, be looking closely at the alternative savings provided by almost 1,000 respondents. In the meantime, more councils have issued Section 114 notices, including 2 of our fellow core cities, and the Chancellor's autumn statement has only added further pressure. Ultimately, we need to pass another balanced budget. Without continued sound financial management, Tory government commissioners will be appointed to do that for us, and the council tax reduction scheme likely the first thing on the chopping block. But as the report sets out, now is not the time to change the scheme. This is welcome news for families, but it means that the upcoming budget requires another £3 million of savings. After more than 13 years of national government austerity, there are no easy decisions left, no efficiencies to make, and no fat to trim. More difficult decisions lie ahead, and it will be incumbent on all of us to come together and pick from the least bad options. So on this report, we've received no public forum statements. But turning to questions, there were 2 public forum questions. The first is from Andy Watt. Andy, are you here? No? Okay. The second was from Dan Ackroyd. Dan, I can see you're here. Please ask your question.
First, I want to make clear that I do think this administration is doing a good job controlling the budget for Bristol City Council. This city is clearly in a better position than Nottingham or Birmingham are. But the austerity measures and lack of funding from central government appear to have reached a critical level here in Bristol. and now the city is facing a lot of emergency spending due to the situation at Barton House. You've mentioned the austerity in here multiple times, and all parties have agreed it's a terrible situation. I haven't seen any public statements from the Labour group saying this city is going to be facing massive cuts over in the coming years. Is it time to tell people what's coming?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I mean, I guess what I would have to, I agree with much what you said, but I would have to disagree with the final point, which is that we don't make enough statements about this. I mean, we talk at every cabinet and full council meeting. We've worked with local partners on campaigns, unions, businesses, the voluntary sector. We've mentioned it in at least 50 blogs. The Mayor discussed it on Radio Bristol last week. Nationally, we do that through the LGA, which Marvin sits on the one of the boards, the core cities, where Marvin is the chair, and for the UK 100, again, where we make the same representation. After 8 years of kind of living and breathing this, it has been tough. And I mean, you've heard this evening, we've got competing priorities: council tax reduction scheme, local crisis prevention fund, free school meals, culture, we've got the whole range of things that we're trying to balance every day. None of it is easy. And as I just said, some of it is about making the least worst option sometimes. So you've got two bad things, which one's less bad than the other? And that's not why I got into local government. I had quite a difficult childhood, and when I came out of it, I wanted to make the world a better place, so I became a councillor to try and do that. What I've actually had to do is manage a lot of decline, because it's been an awful 13 years of austerity that we're facing, and the recent statement only really confirms that that's going to continue for some time. So yeah, I mean, thank you for your comments. We will continue to make statements. I mean, I have talked today about, we've declared an environmental emergency, we've declared an ecological emergency. Should we declare like a financial emergency as a council, and representing other cities up and down the land? Because it really is at the arse end of things now, to be frank. It's not a great time. And lumped in with inflation, cost of operating pressures that everyone's facing, including the council, it's not helped. So thank you. Not sure I've got an answer beyond we will continue to do what I think we're already doing. Do you have a supplementary?
I'd just like to say that the idea of a financial crisis declaration sounds like a great idea, and I look forward to hearing more details about it.
Thanks, Dan. Do any cabinet members wish to comment? Tom?
I'd just like to thank you for your leadership on this, Craig. It's been a really tough process, and we've. Thanks to Craig. So.
It's got nothing to do with you, lot.
So you've led the process with distinction, and worked really closely with the cross-party working group as well, to kind of really look at all options, because local government finance has been on its knees for years. And I think, it's a real testament to the situation we're in, not that we haven't got difficult choices and a difficult road ahead compared with some of the local authorities. So, just a huge thank you. And, hopefully a committee system will be able to keep sound financial management on track.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Any more comments from cabinet members? No? Okay. I will now take the decision, which will be displayed on screen. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Okay, agenda item 17, the council tax base. It's another one from me. This report recommends for approval by full council the council tax base for the next financial year. It sets out the number of properties that are forecast to pay council tax next year after taking account of discounts and exemptions. This includes households that are exempt or receive discounts to their council tax bills under national rules, such as students and single occupiers. In addition, although seeing a general reduction in claimants, particularly those of working age, we are continuing to help over 32,000 low-income households through a council tax reduction scheme. A key element impacting on the tax base is the collection rate. 23-24 has seen an improved position in the overall collection rate, from a budgeted 95% to a likely 96.5% by year end. And that's whilst continuing to operate our ethical debt collection policy, which means we don't send bailiffs round to people's houses that can't afford to pay. This is an ambitious target, but remains below the pre-pandemic rate of 98.5. To facilitate improvements in the collection rate, £300,000 has been set aside from the collection fund to provide additional resources to assist the revenues team. Continued growth in the property market, the reduction in claims for council tax support, and increases in collection rate results in overall growth in the council tax base of 3.93%. On this report, we've received no public forum statements, but we do have public forum questions. The first from David Redgewell on behalf of the South West Transport Network. David, please ask your first question.
Thanks very much. Yes, so we're in a bit of a unique position in Bristol, Baines and South Gloucestershire that our Transport Authority has no precepting powers. So that's WECA. So we're reliant on the WECA Act, which actually puts a duty on this local authority, Baines, South Gloucestershire and even North Somerset in the Act, to collect taxation under what is called the transport levy and passport that to the Metro Mayor as a joint service to fund public transport. So my question really is, what is going to happen with the transport levy this year? Is there going to be a clear, transparent, like there has been in Cambridge and Peterborough, combined authority, Labour, a transparent consultation with stakeholders, not just by yourselves, but by the adjacent three authorities as well, to make sure we understand what is going to the Metro Mayor, how much that is, and what discussions are taking place, especially around bus services, which affect the most hard-to-reach working-class estates in this city that have had their buses withdrawn. We're talking about some of the poorest members in society cut off from public transport, including up in your own ward itself, Hillfield. So I just ask that this year there is a transparent conversation, and of course the Metro Mayor has some money through his bus service improvement plan. And also, I believe we might be going to use some of the Clean Air Zone money towards public transport, which I would very, very much welcome on behalf of the people I represent on the Passenger Advisory Board for the West of England Rail Combined Authority North Somerset Council. I'll say that in view of all the political shenanigans going on at the moment. Just to be clear, I've got an interest and I'm sitting on the board.
Thanks, David. So in terms of the CAS, we'll be bringing forward a paper in January, which will talk about some of that. In terms of the transport levy, I guess it's sort of a question for Dan, although obviously we've just talked about the fact that any increase in a levy is a cut to another service somewhere, and we are at a point of not having much left to go at. So that's not an easy decision for council to make, but I'm sure we're up for the conversation. Thank you. You did have a second question. Did you want to ask that one as well, or did you cover it in the same? Oh, I think you covered it in the same, didn't you? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Does anyone from Cabinet wish to comment? No? Okay. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Agenda item 18, Finance Strategic Partnership. So in November 2022, after 13 years of hollowing out various back office departments, we commissioned or tendered for a finance strategic partner, which means we can buy in bits of finance resource as we need it and then let it go again when we don't need it anymore. That's been working really well, and projects and teams across the council have been buying that resource into their various bits of work. Of course, we're reaching the point at which we will overspend on the amount of money that was tendered for in the original contract. So this is a paper which is asking us to revise the value of the contract. Again, it's not a commitment to spend, but it's a commitment that we have the capacity within the contract to be able to spend should we need to as an organisation. So we've received no public forum statements on this. Do any Cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Agenda item 19, Fees and Charges Review. As part of the budget set in February 2023, savings of £500,000 were identified to be delivered through fees and charges increase above the 5% base level of inflation approved within the budget. The following work was undertaken to outline potential opportunities in comparison to other authorities, focusing specifically on areas where charges are not currently made, cost recovery is not currently achieved, and Bristol's charges were below others. A total of 8 areas were shortlisted as opportunities for further due diligence and validation, which have subsequently been developed by the Council alongside our finance strategic partner, Ernst & Young. This work has outlined 5 changes to fees and charges that are deliverable within the current financial year as follows. Recharging for the IT services provided by the Bristol Ops Centre in 23-24 and a 10% increase in internal and external fees in 24-25. a 5% increase in charges for markets in 23-24, followed by a further increase in 24-25, a 10% increase on average in cafes and kiosks, increases to event booking fees from £30 to £50 and premises licences from £1,500 to £2,500 in the registry office, a 4 to 13% increase in cemeteries and crematoria. In total, the recommendations would generate between 117 and 217,000 in this year and 420 and 719,000 in 24-25. On this report, we've received no public forum statements or questions. Any Cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay. I will now take the decision, which will be displayed on screen. In terms of the decisions being made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Agenda item 20. Me again, I'm afraid I get sore throat at this rate. The finance report for P7 23-24 is an exception report and highlights the significant financial issues and movements against the Council's forecast position since last period. At period 7, the Council is forecasting an overspend of 19.3 million against the approved general fund budget of 483.5 million. This includes the 11.5 million emerging pressure previously reported within children education and for which funding to mitigate is currently held within an earmarked reserve, plus other emerging pressures of 5.7 million in children education and 1.9 million in adults and communities. The period 8 quarter 3 report will include detailed plans as to how these further emerging pressures will be mitigated in year. Additional risks and opportunities which could impact the general fund are assessed as presenting an incremental weighted net risk of 0.7 million. The forecast outturn includes the planned delivery of 37 million of savings, except where risk of non-delivery has been included in the 0.7 just mentioned. This net risk does not include any implications linked to the eventual pay award for 23-24. The housing revenue account continues to forecast a 0.8 million full-year underspend. Any under or overspend will be balanced through the HRA general reserves at the full-year close. The dedicated schools grant continues to forecast a 16.4 million full-year overspend. This level of overspend will bring the DSG's carry-forward deficit at the close of 23-24 to 56.1 million. Public health continues to forecast no variance to its ring-fenced budget of 35.7 million. At period 7, the capital programme is forecasting an underspend of 30.4 million. This represents a 17.5 million underspend on general fund capital investment, including the contingency, and a 12.9 million underspend on the HRA's capital programme. On this report, we've received no public forum questions, but one statement, which is from David Redgewell on behalf of South West Transport Network. David, you have 1 minute. I'm going to time you this time as well.
This has thrown me, really, because it wasn't something I was expecting to be speaking on, but it's been put on this. I mean, it's obviously about the expenditure, really, of the authority, and it's making sure that the expenditure, financial expenditure, is kept under control, both here and at the West of England Mirror Combined Authority, because I'm quite concerned about the level of officers that are being highly funded by the Combined Authority. I mean, we've got a review of the planning team here, and the number of interims and the number of consultants. But really, this is a point to you as, I think, HR people to really look with South Gloucestershire, North Somerset and Baines again, at how we're employing people over at the Combined Authority and how many people are actually working for the Combined Authority and as interim directors which are not, and how many consultant fees we continue to pay. It should not be going on. We need to get this under control, Craig. It's a lot of taxpayers' money, and we can't afford it when we're under a financial emergency in the 4 unitary authorities. It's not just Nottingham. Baines is in trouble. Somerset's in trouble. Gloucestershire's having problems. It's all around us we have problems. And we have a combined authority that's spending money that's not being properly controlled. And that's not down necessarily to the mayor. That's down to the people that sit on scrutiny, audit, but more importantly, it's the HR committee. And I've raised this with Councillor Guy, raised this now with Ian Bourton and Claire at South Gloucestershire. Please, can you take a look at this expenditure? I think this, I'm going to put it, bus marketing has made this really an interesting situation that we've got people who don't even control the authority or work for us, making decisions about the future of the authority. Please, can we get this back under proper control? And get the officers working for the West of England Combined Authority. And of course also transferring officers from here in the Transport Directorate across to Wecker as the Mayor and the Cabinet made a decision to do last year. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. We will, of course, continue to watch that closely and provide input where we can. Obviously, you were referring to Wecker rather than ourselves there. Yeah, absolutely. Do any Cabinet members wish to comment? No? Okay, thank you. In terms of decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Okay, agenda item 21, Director of Public Health 2023 Annual Report. Ellie King, over to you.
Thank you. It is an absolute pleasure to introduce this year's Director of Public Health report, entitled The Power of Us, One City, Many Communities. The report is a real celebration of Bristol's communities, as diverse, vibrant and resilient as they are, despite the huge challenges in recent years. It talks of the Council's role as an enabler of community action, of building connectivity between people, of collaboration between organisations, and how that supports the health and well-being of our residents. The benefits of this are far-reaching, and I'm reminded of the Community Resilience Fund and the incredible feedback from the event we had here in City Hall to celebrate that over 100 residents from our most disadvantaged areas became decision makers. A process that invested in people who do not always feel like their community, area or system serves them well, and connected them to officers, councillors, information resource and to each other to decide where would be best to invest 4 million of capital into their communities. This built trust, an agency and a network of collaborators keen to build on this strong foundation to create more positive action. The report showcases some brilliant examples of groups coming together over shared challenges, including Black South West Network's Make It Work programme, which reimagines relationships between commissioner and provider to co-produce diverse and culturally appropriate adult social care models. The Power of Us is emblematic of our commitment to equity and social justice, and it lays out a compassionate, preventative approach to creating a resilient Bristol that can withstand the challenges to come. It is what helped us work citywide to provide 105 welcome spaces last year. It is what shows us the value of our parks, libraries and community spaces in supporting health, wellbeing and connectivity, and an approach that supported us through the toughest period of COVID. It speaks to the convening power of the Bristol One City approach and the collective reach of all the members therein. I want to thank Christina Gray for her leadership on this, as well as her fantastic team. We're very fortunate to have a DPH that has ensured that public health feeds into every area of our council, and the wider impact of this work across the city cannot be underestimated. Please take the time to read the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. We've received no public forum statements or questions on this one. Do any Cabinet members want to comment? Sure. I assumed you would.
Yeah, no, I just want to also extend my thanks to Christina and the team. And I think we never made a better decision than to put community development into public health, because the impact that we have made has been a really positive one. And as you said, around the BIF funding, you know, we were talking earlier about lack of transparency. I don't understand. We have been completely transparent in every single funding programme, whether it's BIF, whether it has been the Cultural Fund, whatever funding we have made available, and particularly the Community Resilience Fund. I was a part of that process as a kind of bystander, and it was amazing to see so many just ordinary members of the public, residents, kind of engaging and looking through those applications, asking the right kinds of questions, and actually opening the eyes of many of those residents to what's happening in other parts of the cities and the types of organisations that exist and that we're applying for that Community Resilience Fund, which was open to everyone, including arts and cultural organisations and others who benefited. So, yeah, congratulations to you, Ellie. Yeah, you and your team have done a great job this year. Thanks.
Thanks, Asher. Any other Cabinet members want to comment? I mean, I'd probably just say, when we came in, obviously Marvin had this idea that we would feed finance and public health through all decision making, so we understood the financial output and the public health implications of what we were doing. And thanks to you, obviously, Asher, you led on that originally, and Ellie since then, and obviously huge thanks to Christina and to Denise in finance for driving that through the kind of officer core as well, and it's been it's made a massive difference to people's lives, so thank you. Ellie, can I hand back to you? I still report just for noting, so I don't know if you want any final comments.
Only to say that, yeah, I think it shows that Marvin has worked with Christina in a public health capacity in a previous iteration, And it really just shows, and you can see that from the creation of the One City model, which I think Christina always says, if during COVID, if it didn't exist, we would have to have invented it. And it just really shows how that collective reach of organisations across all our different sectors and all our different areas of work really feeds into creating aligned priorities and a great reach across the people of Bristol, so that we can make sure that we can respond to them and support them during our difficult times, but also build agency for the good times as well, and build positive social action. So thank you, Christina, and thank you, Marvin, as well, for your leadership. And I think it's just for noting this report.
Brilliant, thanks, Emmy. Okay, so agenda item 22, Barton House emergency evacuation. I will ask Councillor Dudd to introduce this one.
Thank you, Craig. And first of all, I just wanted to say thank you to the residents who've turned up tonight to obviously come and see and hear this report, and also for your contribution earlier in the night, but also how you've responded since the evacuation. I think it's been absolutely fantastic the way you've dealt with the situation. This report is it's a bit of a kind of a technical one, and it's one for noting because it relates to the emergency spend on the situation. So the decision's already been taken on the emergency spend, but it's had to come here for noting. So it's not a substantive report in terms of talking about the issue as a whole. It's just focused on the spend, but obviously there's many lessons to be learned from what happened, and that will obviously be dealt with in the future. So I've met many residents in the I've met many residents in the audience.
So we have a number of people who submit questions through the proper process. Can we follow that process, please?
So just as I said, to note, this is an urgent key decision taken by the Chief Executive to authorise a cumulative spend of up to £2.6 million to support the emergency evacuation of Barton House. So what led to this was a peer review of an earlier structural survey undertaken by Arup in November 23. This highlighted a risk of a fire, explosion, or impact having the capability to cause progressive collapse within the building due to a structural failure. As a result of this risk, the decision was taken on the 14th of November to undertake an emergency temporary decant. The emergency temporary decant required the urgent provision of emergency accommodation for tenants, including the use of hotels and other private sector accommodation. As well as noting the urgent key decision, this report also seeks to further address the cost implications of the evacuation of Barton House. Further costs around home loss payments, void loss from units affected, and any other compensation may also arise should a decision be required to decommission the building following the receipt of a further detailed analysis of the building structure. Thank you.
Thanks, Kai. So on this report, we've received one public forum statement, which was from Yasmin Qureshi. Yasmin, are you here? No? Okay. So we've had 9 public forum questions from 6 different people. I'll just explain the usual process for this is that you submit your question in advance. You get to ask 2 questions and 2 follow-up questions on the subject. So I just want to work through these methodically and make sure everyone gets a chance to ask their question. Anyone not here gets a written reply within 10 days. So thank you for helping us to conduct the meeting in an orderly way. The first 2 questions are from Nigel Varley. Nigel, are you here?
Yeah.
Thank you, Nigel. Please ask your first question.
First of all, I need to explain why I'm asking the question, because I don't live in Barton House. I live in Gilton House, which is a block of council flats reserved for the over 60s. I'm asking the question because I'm very concerned about the ability of the council to plan and consult tenants, given that I'm the victim of the cladding replacement, and at the moment in a freezing cold flat with astronomical electricity bills because of the absolute shambles of the insulation replacement programme by the council. I'm also asking it because I'm an associate member of the Housing Forum and a member of ACON, which strikes me as being the only organisation that's standing up for tenants in this city. Anyway, let's go. The council must surely now be planning for the worst case situation scenario whereby Barton House has to be closed, demolished, or repaired in the long term, along with the other LPS blocks in the city. And we have to now consider what's going to happen to people. Where are they going to be rehoused if that should happen? At the moment, there are 200 void council houses. That means council houses that are empty. There's a quite considerable29 when a house becomes empty. It's 100 days for major refurbishment, 29 days for standard. That will need to be speeded up if people are rehoused in these voids, with the refurbishment work being done retrospectively. Will the council consider that? Secondly, will the council consider the very large number of empty homes in this city? It was outlined in the Post last week. 2,472 currently empty second homes in this city, and 1,881 long-term empty houses. Will the council consider taking the necessary steps to acquire these homes if it becomes necessary to rehouse perhaps thousands of tenants from the condemned tower blocks? That's the first question. Do you want me to do the second question as well?
No, we'll answer that one and then you can decide on your supplementaries.
Yeah, thanks, Nigel. Obviously, first, clearly we need to get the results of the structural survey back, which we hope we should have within the next 7 days. But obviously, we are looking at various scenarios. What if this happens? What if that happens? And quite clearly, bringing more voids back into use is potentially part of the answer in terms of dealing with this if it turns out the building is unsafe to go back into. So we are accelerating and putting more resource into that issue of the voids to potentially be part of the solution if it does turn out that we can bring people back into Barton House.
Only 200 of them.
Well, quite clearly, you really highlight how difficult the situation would be if we had to rehouse 98 households. So it's extremely challenging. As you say, we've got about 200 and so voids that are currently being worked on. There's another 100 or so that are due to have work done on them to bring them back into use. So quite clearly, we'd have to bring everything to bear to get all those voids back into use to help us manage this issue.
Do you have a supplementary on that one?
Well, the supplementary really is. Are you making long-term plans for the worst-case scenario? If you are, will you be open about what they are and what are you going to do? What about these empty homes? What are the possibilities in terms of acquiring the large numbers of empty homes in Bristol?
So on the empty homes, obviously, in terms of second homes and things like that, obviously we don't have the power to acquisition them or the empty homes that you talk about, but we do have. There's a proposal around about 11 million, I think, in the HRA budget, capital budget, which deals with acquisitions of properties. So we might have some money to acquire properties as well. But obviously, if we've got these 200-300 voids, that we really need to get them back into use first.
Yeah, I mean, we have an acquisitions program, obviously buying people's homes that they own. So as in the second homes you mentioned, that involves compulsory purchase orders. Those are long, drawn out, expensive legal processes. Each one would have to go through a whole court battle. So whilst I'm with you in spirit on people having second homes, whilst people are in a housing crisis and is a part of the disaster, actually resolving that issue is not as easy as just saying let's do it, because it's a long, complicated process. But we, as Kai's mentioned, we do have £11 million to buy houses that are genuinely for sale. So yeah, thank you. So then you had a second question.
Yeah, it's about the question: will you ensure for both in the short term and the long term, that you'll talk to the evacuees from Barton House and the other blocks if necessary. There's been all sorts of problems in terms of communication, openness with Barton House residents, which have been in the press, have been clearly stated in the short term, all the problems about moving people into the Holiday Inn and so on. And there are going to be even more problems if we do have to demolish these blocks. And the important thing is not to inform or consult, but to negotiate with residents. And there's a difference. When you consult, you just simply tell people what's going to happen. When you negotiate...
Can we cut to the question?
Yes, this is the question.
Okay.
Because I'm asking for negotiation with elected and accountable tenants' representatives, right? Because negotiation means you try and achieve agreement.
So is your question, will we...
Are you going to establish the mechanism by which you can negotiate with democratic and accountable representatives of the Barton House residents rather than people that you pick and choose?
Yeah, so I heard that, well, the latest information I had was that there wasn't a tenants association there, but it's obviously it's obviously good to hear that one is being proposed to be set up again. So I see that as a positive. Yeah, no, that's it. I spoke to the gentleman on Friday, so about reinvigorating that tenants association. So if that was to happen, then we definitely see that as a very important stakeholder. So any support that we can give you.
Can we have one question and answer, please?
Yeah, any support that we can give you to set that up, then we'll definitely consider that an important stakeholder. So yeah, that we'd welcome that.
Thank you very much. Okay, do you have a supplementary to your second question?
Yeah. Would you recognise Acorn as representing tenants in the tower blocks? It has now a considerable number of members there. I think I know what the answer is.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, yeah, well, well, the answer's no, but I would say we'd recognise the tenants association as we do in other parts of the city. I mean, I was involved with a very, very successful one, Redcliffe Residents Association. That was a very good one, still active, and that's the structure that the council engages with.
Thank you, Kai. Next, we've got two questions from Faye Davis. Faye, are you here? No? Okay. Moving on, we've got a question from Dan Ackroyd. Dan, you are here.
I realise it is too soon to investigate the response of the council once the nature of the emergency situation became public.
I don't think your microphone's working, Dan. Sorry. There we go. Thank you.
I realise that it is too soon to investigate the response of the council once the nature of the emergency became public, but people of Bristol, particularly those who live at Barton House, deserve to know the details of the concerns regarding the safety of buildings that have led to large amounts of money being spent in an emergency. There are multiple FOI requests outstanding that seek basic information that should have been released weeks or possibly years ago. It would save the FOI team a lot of work if the council was proactively releasing information about what has happened. If nothing else, councillors setting the budget need to know detailed information about the problems at Barton House. The unexpected cost looks very likely to be a larger amount of money than the council tax reduction scheme. Please will you commit, or will this council commit to providing responses to those FOI requests before the budget scrutiny meeting on Friday?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So both of the FOIs you refer to in your question, they're both still within the statutory limit in terms of when you can expect a response. We can't commit to a specific date because the officers that would sort of compile those responses, we're prioritising their time in terms of dealing with the issue at hand. So I can't give a specific date, but obviously the cabinet paper that we've got in front of us today details a lot of the questions that probably would come up at that meeting around costs and what we spent and what we're proposing to spend money on, etc. So I think this probably deals with it for that particular meeting. But as I said, we want to prioritise the officers' time on actually dealing with the crisis at hand.
Do you have a supplementary, Dan?
I'd first just like to note that statutory limits are limits. You're allowed to respond to questions more quickly. My question is actually for the Chair, I think. I've made quite serious allegations of unlawfulness at Bristol City Council, and I've said before at the Audit Committee that I do not trust this council to behave within the law, always. Would it be possible for you to ask the gentleman to your right when he's going to respond to my letter about this matter?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen just said to me that he received your letter yesterday. We will consider it and respond. I don't know what those allegations are. I'm sorry, I haven't heard them, but thank you. We will reply. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is a question from Councillor Ali. Amal.
Hi. It's an enormously difficult time for residents. I have a sympathy for them. I have a sympathy for the people who had to be asked to leave their homes in a short notice. As a councillor elsewhere and a Lawrence Hill resident, I have been supporting the residents of Barton Hill throughout this and will continue to do so. However, I am glad that the executive took the difficult decision to evacuate the building and putting residents' safety first when we learned about the situation. I am grateful to the officers and my fellow councillors, including my cabinet members, who helped throughout the day and into the night of the evacuation and since then. I also want to put on record my thanks to all the volunteers at Cafe Conscience, the Bristol Cable for fundraising, and everyone who donated, and the council community development teams for all the help and support they have given to the residents during evacuation and afterwards. I have been speaking to the residents since the evacuation, and the main questions they have asked me is, when will we know whether it is safe to move back?
Right, yeah, thanks, Amal, and obviously thanks for all the support you've also been providing. So we hope to have an outcome from the surveys within the next week. Obviously, it's important that we're going to get these surveys back, that they're properly analysed by the building safety experts here, and we take time to sort of look at those properly. So we're hoping within the next week or so that we'll be able to get back to residents about what the long-term future potentially is.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. If the process is taking longer than expected, would residents be rehoused elsewhere, or would they remain in Holiday Inn?
So as I said, we can't. Yeah, we hope it's within the next week, but we're not expecting to rehouse anyone anywhere else apart from the Holiday Inn. Although there's some cases where, due to the needs of that particular family, we have found other alternative accommodation, but we don't expect any changes to the accommodation in the sort of short-term or medium-term future.
Thanks, Amal. Thank you, Kai. Can I ask any cabinet members if they wish to comment? No? Okay, thank everyone for their comments. Thank you all for attending. And this report is just for noting by cabinet. Thank you. He doesn't have a question submitted. Oh no, but you can't. No, you need to submit a question in advance so we can prepare for the response. That's the process. Okay. Everybody else is. Everyone else is.
I don't care for your agenda. I care for an answer, and she cares for an answer. She wishes to ask a question. Have the dignity to give her that moment.
So you're speaking to me of dignity whilst pointing and shouting at me. You think that's dignified, do you?
Yes.
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. So, I'm sorry.
I'm still there, mate. I haven't moved out. I'm still there. She wants to ask a question. Allow her to ask a question.
We can.
I've never asked a goddamn question.
I'm sorry, there is a process for this meeting, and that process is there to make sure that everyone who has the opportunity to ask a question, that they submit in advance.
It takes you 30
It depends what the question... I mean, what answer can we provide? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to move on to agenda item 23, the extension of the Civica housing IT contract. Councillor Dud, can I ask you to introduce the report? So we will happily speak to her after the meeting, but there is a process for this meeting that we follow. Well, thank you. You're shouting at me and pointing, so we can talk about out of order all night if you want. Right, Kai, agenda item 23, extension of Civica housing IT contract.
Thank you. The Housing IT Transformation Programme is implementing a new integrated housing management solution, which will not be ready by the end of this existing contract, and therefore a one-year extension is required to allow for continued use of existing Civica systems, CX housing management, Keystone asset management, and Abritus. The existing contract is due to end on the 30th of April 2024. The extension proposal received from Civica is now higher than the previously agreed Cabinet decision due to the inclusion of unexpected licence costs of £375,000. An officer decision has been taken by the Executive Director for Growth and Regeneration on the 27th of November to approve the additional expenditure of £375,562 to ensure that the extension has been put in place by the agreed deadline to ensure the continuation of this critical housing IT system.
Thank you, Kai. On this report, we received no public forum statements or questions. Can I ask any Cabinet members to comment? No? Okay, in which case, Kai, I'll hand it back to you to take the decision, which I support and will now be displayed on screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Kai. And that is the last agenda item, so that's the end of today's Cabinet meeting. I thank everyone for attending. The date of the next Cabinet is the 23rd of January 2024. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone.